Welcome and thank you for joining us. Another market update on what's happening in the plastic pallet world. My name is Bryon Robbins, and joining me here is Sam Dunham of Plastic Pallet Pros, the Director of Operations. Good afternoon, Sam.
How you doing, Bryon?
I'm doing really well. Looking forward to catching up on what's happening in the world of plastics.
Absolutely. It's been busy.
It has. Tell me now, right now, as of today, why is it important to buy plastic pallets?
Oh, I tell you what, I mean, it's just, you're not going to find a better time to buy. Right now, the market on resin, so like the recycled market for resin that goes into plastic pallets is a little bit different. It doesn't follow most just indexes. There's not a simple index that you can follow for that. But right now, it's really dropped a lot. The prices are kind of nearing, you're seeing evidence now that we're kind of hitting the bottom of the market. We've been able to buy resin at some really great prices. And what that means is we're getting you some pallets at some really great prices. It's prices I haven't seen in 3 years.
So what's an example of a pallet, let's say 6 months ago, and what the cost of that pallet was? And we'll look at maybe an expendable pallet, one that's going one way. And what's the price of that pallet today?
Okay, the price of that pallet today, what I would have priced in the $17, $18 range is now running in the $13 range, to give you kind of an idea, a ballpark of what that's looking like for a one-way shipping pallet.
And so what would you say to people today? I mean, today's the time to buy?
Absolutely. Now is the time to buy. I mean, right now, I feel like the market's pretty stable, but it's always hard to tell. Your supply and demand changes. Your producers of the resin change when they start to see that shift in market. So I really don't see anywhere but those prices to go up in the future. And so if you're in the market for a plastic pallet, now's the time to be taking a look at that. I mean, it can save you literally thousands of dollars.
Now, I know last time we spoke, and there's a lot of backlog to plastic pallets. What's that looking like today?
Lead times are fantastic. So availability in regards to getting those pallets produced and getting them in a fast time frame is great. As a matter of fact, we actually have stock of many of those pallets and can literally ship next day. So if you order them today, I can probably have them on a truck heading your way tomorrow.
Yeah, and speaking of trucking that you just brought up, what's the trucking prices looking like?
They've also come down. It's prices, as everybody was aware, all the supply chain challenges that happened during COVID that are still bouncing back in a lot of areas. Freight costs went through the roof. I mean, they really went up a lot. Those have come back down to what I would consider to be kind of normal, or what I would have expected your freight costs to run. So an example might be is what I paid $1.75 to $2 a mile for, 3 years ago, was up to $4 a mile. Now it's getting back down to that $2 a mile range and getting into areas where we're getting back to a much better freight cost. So not only do you get your pallets for less, I can get them to you for less as well.
So what we would tell people today is it's not a matter of time might cost you money. Time will cost you money.
Absolutely.
If you wait before you buy. Now, speaking of pallets, I know with wooden pallets, you can make any configuration. One of the downfalls of plastic, one of the hindrance to plastic, is the cost of a mold, which can cost anywhere from $250,000 all the way up to $500,000, depending on the mold. Plus, you have to get the mold here. They're usually made overseas, which is, as some of our friends have told us here recently, can take months to be able to get those here, and also cost a considerable amount of money. But we have brought some new product into our warehouse. What are some of those new products?
Oh, yeah. And you're right. It is costly to produce a mold. So you need to have some volume in order to look at doing that. But in the process of just identifying opportunities and where there are sizes where there's a need in the market, we've come a long ways, and we've come up with some new options even recently. So a 45 square nestable pallet that we now have available that we didn't have before. We actually just got a prototype in for a 54 by 40, which is a common pallet in agriculture. And it's not something that's been made in plastic before. So we've got those as an option. There's several different materials also. So that's one thing that's changing in the pallet world. Your typical resin, we're looking at more creative ways to make even more sustainable options. So for example, we've got pallets that are available now that are produced with post-consumer recycled plastic. So it's the recycled plastic that ends up lots of times heading to the landfill. Your water bottles, things that are not as easily recyclable, are now being utilized to go into plastic pallets. So it's just keeping more plastic out of the landfill and into use. And then we've got pallets that's being produced with plastic that's being recovered from our rivers that typically end up flowing downstream and into the ocean. So it's ocean-bound plastic. We're able to recover that plastic and produce plastic pallets with it. So there's some new technologies, new ways that we're looking at producing plastic pallets, new sizes available. There's a lot happening and a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, and it's important to get that plastic in the rivers before it hits the oceans. Right now, there is a glob of plastic in the ocean that's the size. I think it's actually bigger than Texas now.
Yeah, it's huge.
That's sitting in there just spinning and floating in a circular motion, so it stays in the same place. But it's something that we want to prevent that plastic ever getting to the ocean. So it's a great way to use that plastic is in pallets. And we're finding that science, just like with ethanol and all the things that they've used corn for and found different ways to use these products, it's the same thing that's happening with recycled plastics. Yeah. Plastics that we put into the bin in our kitchen, a lot of times those plastics could not be used in products such as this, but now they can.
Absolutely. And a lot of people don't realize that. Just because you put it in the recycle bin doesn't mean it gets recycled. We would all like to believe that that's what happens, but it just isn't. There's a lot of that plastic that's not easily processed and not easily recycled. And so therefore it usually doesn't end up getting recycled. So these new technologies and new methods of actually compounding material, producing resin with that material is excellent for the environment. There's even new products that are bio-based. So we're looking at plastics that have a bio-based resin. So it might be produced with hemp or corn stalks or something along those lines, but it's an organic material that's used to replace a certain percentage of the petroleum-based plastic. So there's a lot going into research and design right now on how our plastics are being produced, because plastic pallets as a whole are a more sustainable option. They're made with recycled plastic and they're 100% recyclable. If we can then change the mix of the plastic going into it to make it even more sustainable and better for our environment and better for all of us, then it's just a win-win all the way around.
Well, Sam, thank you for your time today. And you heard it here. If you're wanting a pallet that's going to be more durable, last longer, and help the environment, you need to call Plastic Pallet Pros and talk to a pro today to see how we can help you.